And good morning, everybody. Today is the 19th day of the month of Shabbat. It is what day is it today? The February 8th. That's the 8th of February today. And welcome. We are about to begin the actual text of the book, The Art of Giving. So we're on page 25. We've studied the introduction to this, and now we are ready to get started. And so, page 25, number 1. Our sages state in the first chapter of Baba Batra. Baba? No, it's not quite Baba, but it's Baba Batra. The word Baba Batra is Aramaic for?
Page 24, by the way.
24, 25. The word Baba Batra is Aramaic. Is Aramaic for the final part, the final section. And this is a volume of Talmud, and the Talmud has 6 divisions. The first division is called Zera'im, which means seeds, and that's all about agriculture. All the laws of making blessings, and the laws of tithes, and the laws of tzedakah, all that is in this section. The second of 6 is called Moed, which means time, and that's all connected to things that are connected to time, like Shabbos, Pesach, Rosh Hashanah, Purim, and so on. The third section is called Women. Women, it's all about issues that are connected between man and woman. So you have the laws of ketubah, the laws of marriage, the laws of divorce, and so on. The fourth section is called Nezikin, which means damages. That's basically civil law, anything connected to living with another person, neighbors. What if my animal damaged your animal? My car went into your car. Court systems and with testimonies and witnesses and so on. The fifth section is called Holy, and that's all the material connected to the temple services, the building of the temple and the offerings in the temple, and that which is holy, and all the laws of kosher are in that section as well. And the sixth section is called purity. That's all the laws of purity and impurity are all in there. Those are the 6 sections of the Talmud. Within those sections, there are a bunch of volumes. Some people like to call them tractates. I don't think anybody knows what tractates means. Tractates means volumes. It's a tract. And the first 3 of the book of damages is called Bava Kama, Bava Metzia, Bava Basra. Bava Kama, the first section, Bava Metzia, the middle section, and Bava Basra, the final section. So you have 3 sections, all dealing with civil law. The first one basically deals with damages. The second one basically deals with disputes. I claim this, I want this. And the third one, it all deals with disputes, but this is property disputes and material and so on. And the third one deals with neighbors and backyards and so on and so forth. So that is the 3 that begin the section called damages. Each one of them is long, twisted, and complicated, because when you're dealing with damages between man to man, there's a lot of stuff going on there. Now, in between the laws of damages and between all kinds of laws in the Talmud, there is what we call the Agadah. Agadah means the story section, the fable section. And in this Haggadah is where you have most of the Jewish folklore, whether it is history, midrash style, or whether it is metaphors or ways to live, stories about the sages and the rabbis. That's all there in the Haggadah. Sometimes you just go off on a tangent. They can go off for 3 or 4 or 5 pages. And so when dealing with neighbors, all of a sudden we start talking about tzedakah. At the beginning of this volume, which begins with, the whole section of it, this volume here begins with when neighbors want to build a wall between their property and the wall falls down. So who's responsible for the wall? And how do you have to repair it? How do you have to, when the wall falls? Mm-hmm. So if the wall falls down and its wall's made of brick, and I say, I don't want brick, I want to put wood up there. Good question, right? And there's a dispute brought before the rabbis. What do you do? And so on and so forth. This is what this stuff talks about. And all of a sudden, when you talk about neighbors, tzedakah trickles in there in the Agada section of this part of the Talmud. What does the Talmud say there? So the sages state in the first chapter of Baba Basra concerning the giving to charity, tzedakah, each and every coin adds up to a large sum. That's what the sages say. Where do the sages get this from? So look at footnote number 1, on page 2425. So look at footnote number 1. The Talmud Bava Batra 9b, that's page 9 already, quotes a verse from Isaiah. He donned righteousness like a coat of mail. He donned righteousness, that means he wore righteousness like a coat of mail. I don't know what mail, how he uses the word mail here, but the word that is used in the source is like a armor. So I guess mail is another word for armor, maybe, or, I don't know.
Chainmail. Mail.
M-A-I. Yeah, I don't know if it's spelled that way, but it's. But that's how I'm reading it.
Because I'm thinking of it in terms of all these different things that he has to say.
Yeah.
Because it says in it he expounds. So I'm thinking of mail as coming from different sources.
The Old English mail is armor.
It's Old English. We don't use that word anymore. Anyway, so I don't know why he had to use this word mail. They could have used the word armor, and it would have made a lot more sense to most people. Anyway, but the coat of mail, and expounds. Just as in a coat of mail, every small scale, like an armor, imagine a knight wearing this chink, 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 chink.
Right.
So just like a coat of mail, every small scale adds up to form a large piece of armor, thank you. So it is with charity. Each and every coin adds up to a large sum. So the verse says, and God is wearing this coat of armor. Now, what are you talking about? What coat of armor do you mean? God will be wearing a coat of armor? What, to go into war or something? And does he need a coat of armor? Like, the whole thing doesn't make any sense. So the sages explain it, that it means that he's wearing, just like a coat of armor is comprised of little pieces of metal, and each piece is reinforced, so therefore you've got this whole coat over you. Similarly, God is wearing a garment that is comprised of little bits and pieces of coins, if you will, or of donations to charity. So therefore, every little coin, you get a coin, you give a nickel, you give a dime. Every coin adds up to a large sum. So that's what the sages state in the Talmud of Baba Batra. So this is where this essay, this discourse, is based on that idea that the Talmud presents. Seems like a very simple idea, a very smooth thing, no complications. It doesn't seem to be. Why? Well, I think that I'm giving to tzedakah, and I'm giving my $2, my 2 cents, and what's that? It's nothing. It's not significant. Says the Talmud, every penny adds up to a large sum. So here he asks this question: why is this cumulative element necessary? Why would this be necessary? After all, giving even a single coin to charity constitutes a biblically ordained mitzvah. This mitzvah, by the way, is in this week's Torah portion. This week has 53 commandments in it. It's where, right after Sinai. Yesterday we discussed about Mount Sinai, 10 commandments. Well, today we got the rest of the commandments, at least 53 of them. And he begins with boom, 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 a whole list of commandments after commandments. Many of them are civil laws. And then he turns to other laws between man and God, like keeping kosher, keeping Shabbos, keeping the festivals. It's all in this week's portion. It's basically life as a Jew. Not much about temple and purity and impurity. That is just bits and pieces of it. Life as a Jew is in this week's Torah portion, which is obviously right after Sinai. That's when we became Jews. So the Torah tells a person to give charity. So every time you give charity, you're fulfilling the mitzvah. Why tell us about this large sum? Why is it necessary to give us this idea that every little bit adds up to a large sum? What are you talking about? Every little bit is another mitzvah. Thus we find, also in the same section of Talmud, that Rabbi Elazar would give a coin to a pauper and then pray. Before he prayed, he gave a tzedakah to a poor person. Then he prayed. In keeping with the verse in Psalm, through righteousness, which is tzedek, I will behold your countenance. So King David says, with righteousness, I will get to know you, I will know your countenance. What's righteousness? In Hebrew, it's tzedek. What's charity? Tzedakah. It's the same word. The word tzedakah actually doesn't mean charity. The word tzedakah means righteousness, like tzaddik, like a righteous person. Charity is not a good translation. Tzedek means it's the right thing to do. It's the righteous thing to do, to give tzedakah. Why? Because we get a certain amount from God, and we are entrusted. It's not just given to us for us to enjoy, but it's given to us to help others enjoy. If we have more than what we need, it is a sign that God trusts us to give that to others, to the needy, to the worthy causes, as they say. So giving the charity is not really charity. Charity sounds like you're taking care of the poor. Rather, it's righteousness. And so since he says in Psalms that with righteousness I will see your countenance, I will see your face, God. How do you see God with righteousness? Being righteous, that's one way. Then you can see God and you can perceive God better. Or, if you're righteous, before you pray, in other words, before the time comes where you are designated to meet God in the prayer hall, in the synagogue, or wherever you're going to pray, before that you give something to tzedakah, to tzedek, and then I can have a better chance of seeing your face, your countenance. So the Talmud says that Rabbi Elazar would give a coin to a poor person every day in the morning before he prayed. Before he got to see or meet God, he went and gave her something to tzedakah so that he should be able to see a deeper element of God. The author of this discourse, it was the third Rebbe of Chabad, passed away in the year 1866, 2 days before Pesach. And he was a grandson of the first Rebbe, of the founding Rebbe, Rabbi Shneur Zalman. His name was Menachem Mendel. And like this Rebbe's name, and their wives also had the same name, Chaya Mushka. Her yahrzeit, by the way, is this Wednesday. Chaya Mushka, our Chaya Mushka. Anyway, this Rebbe, his grandfather passed away, and his father-in-law, who was also his uncle, he married his first cousin, so his father-in-law became the next Rebbe. When his father-in-law passed away, he wasn't there for long. He was about 12 or 13 years, and he passed away very young. He passed away at the age of 54. So when his father-in-law passed away, he was, in his 30s, I guess. 30, late 30s, early 40s. And he became the Rebbe. And he was a very prolific, he was one of the longest Rebbes, so there was a lot of time to find out about him. He wrote thousands of pages of Torah in the Talmudic section and in the Kabbalah Hasidic section. Made a lot of inroads around the whole Eastern Europe. Put tremendous effort into two very important elements. One of them was the fight against the reform, who wanted to reform the education of all Jews in Russia, and it would do away with traditional Judaism. This wasn't just a fight against the reform, it was a fight for Judaism. And he was arrested, house arrested, 22 times when he was in St. Petersburg. He wasn't sure if he would come home alive. He thought they would put him to death. That's how hard he had to fight. That's how nasty the fight was. Because they got into the government of Russia and they wanted to very much do away with the old-fashioned Judaism, the old-fashioned shtetl Judaism, basically destroy Judaism. And that was one element he put a tremendous effort in the 1840s. And another thing that he did, very commendable to him, was he did away with the fight between those who opposed Hasidism, the Jews who were against Hasidism, thinking that Hasidism would lead Jews astray. How ironic is that? And that was an element that was around for the first 100 years or so of Hasidism. He went and visited all these people, one after the next, the leaders from those communities, and they visited him, and there was a friendship and an understanding, and we do our thing, you'll do your thing, but we will both respect one another, and that's how it basically has remained. There was now crossovers between Hasidism and those who are non-Hasidim. That all happened in his time and through his efforts. Now, when he became the Rebbe, his mother, we went through this when we first started this, his mother was Devorah Leah. Our daughter who is in Jerusalem now, Leah is named for her. She, and I told the story when we started this, so just very briefly, she realized that there is a decree against her father, who was the first Rebbe, for spreading Hasidism from heaven, and that he was sentenced to pass away during a year, and she took the death instead of him. And so she dies 2 days after, day after Rosh Hashanah, on the fast of Gedalia. The day after the second day of Rosh Hashanah, third day of the year, she died. And her son was just 3 years old, who became this Rebbe. And so she said to her father, I'm just asking for one thing, take my son. I want you to bring him up. And so he was extremely close to his grandfather, more than a regular grandchild, and he had plenty of grandchildren, but this one, there was a special bond, a father to son type of bond, and grandfather to grandson. So he was sort of groomed for this position, for becoming the third Rebbe. And after, and this is my point here, after this Rebbe, after the third Rebbe became the Rebbe, assumed leadership, he had a direct communication with his departed grandfather, who was about 14, 15 years after his passing. Whenever he had an issue, a question, or a doubt, he could have seen his grandfather as though he was standing here, literally, not as though he was there, physically, and there was a discussion. He talked as if it was the most normal, natural thing. And then there was a time where his grandfather simply didn't show up. And how are you going to call him from the other world? All the Rebbe's, by the way, had this type of communication with their predecessors and the previous ones, and they would say this like all the time. They would mention this. I'm talking about even this Rebbe. And there are numerous stories about different things that happened. That whoa, and anyway, but that's not for now. The point again is this third Rebbe who did not have the ability to see his grandfather. This went on for a few months and caused him lots of aggravation and grief. He wasn't sure what had happened here. Among the things that he did, this Rebbe, he also ran a free loan society. Free loan means that we give you loans and there's no interest. It's free of interest. So you need $1,000 to complete your purchase of your home. If you need it now, you can pay it up over the next 12 months. You're going to pay $100 a month until you can get it. But you can't do the $1,000. So you get a loan, and instead of them charging you $1,200 a month to make it up, you only have to pay the $100. No $1,000, no interest free interest, free of interest, which is a very good deal. It's just a loan to help you along, and the other person is not looking to make money off you. It's against the Torah to take interest, unless there are certain ways you can do it. But interest is a forbidden. When it comes to money, it's forbidden to make money on money. Loan the person and don't ask for money. For extra money. Ask for your money back, but not the extra money if it's a loan. And this Rebbe ran this Free Loan Society. One morning he was walking to synagogue in Lubavitch, in the town of Lubavitch, the city, the village of Lubavitch. And it was the market day. So on that day, there was a lot of buying and selling in the marketplace. And Yankel came over to the Rebbe. It was 5 o'clock in the morning. He was on his way to synagogue. Yankel was on his way to the market. And he said, Rebbe, I need a few hundred ruble here for a loan to buy some things. And when I sell it, I will make the money back. I'll keep the profit and give you back the loan. So the Rebbe said, sure, no problem. After I finish praying, I will open up the thing for you. So he gets into the synagogue, the Rebbe, and he opens up his bag and he begins to take out his tallis. He says, wait a minute. He needs the money now. When I finish davening, it's going to be 2-3 hours. He needs to buy his supplies right now and then be able to sell. I can't daven now. I got to take care of this guy. So he puts down his tallis, walks out of the synagogue, and starts looking up and down for Yankel. And it takes him a while. He gives up his time with God and he looks for Yankel. And he finds him. And he says, Yankel, follow me. Come with me. I got to go to my office and get rid of money. I'm sorry. I should have given it to you right away. He takes him to his office, and he gives him the money, and Yankel happily goes on his way. The Rebbe goes back to the synagogue, and he puts on his tallis. And as he puts on the tallis, his father appears. His grandfather appears in the tallis. And his grandfather said, for whatever reason, I couldn't come to you, but now that you went out of your way before davening to give, and you gave up on your own connection to God, so that a fellow human being should be able to have some business, to have something to do. Now you get this special privilege as a result of this sacrifice or this devotion, this dedication. And that's a very telling story. I will perceive God when I betzedek, when I give tzedakah, when I do the right thing. And you're talking about a Rebbe here who he writes a 40-chapter deep, mystical, esoteric presentation, essay. He started it when he was 12, all about prayer, how incredibly crucial and critical prayer is, how important it is, and what it does in heaven. So he's explaining us how important prayer is, but that doesn't come to the importance of somebody who simply needs a loan to do some business, to help out a fellow Jew. Your prayers, very important. But if you have something sitting on your head and you got to take care of a fellow Jew, go take care of him first. And that gave him the extra merit, the extra credit, if you will. So his grandfather made an appearance after months of not showing up. And that's similar to this story where Rabbi Elazar gave a coin to charity before he prayed, because he wanted to perceive God properly. So if you want to see God, see fellow man first. Okay, so therefore, here the question becomes, it's such a big mitzvah to give tzedakah. What are you telling us about every coin adds up to a big sum? Every coin is a big sum. It's a mitzvah. Additionally, since the giving of even a single coin to charity constitutes a biblically ordained mitzvah, every coin is a mitzvah, it is certain that God, who rewards each and every mitzvah, and does not withhold reward even for words fittingly spoken. That means even if a person says words that are good, nice words, he didn't do anything, but he just made somebody else feel good by saying good words, you get rewarded for that, and he won't miss that out either. So God, who knows all of this and is ready to give rewards for everything, will reward the fulfillment of such a definite mitzvah of giving tzedakah, especially since giving to charity is a great and lofty mitzvah and is equivalent to all the other mitzvahs combined. We learned this in the introduction here, that the Talmud says that the mitzvah of tzedakah is equal or equivalent to all the other mitzvahs combined. Of course, one has to do all the mitzvahs. One shouldn't neglect any of the mitzvahs. And one is mandated to follow everything, Shabbos and kosher and the festivals and tefillin and mezuzah and so on. But giving tzedakah has a power that no other mitzvah has. And it's equivalent to all of them. That's what the Talmud says. In fact, when the Talmud talks about the mitzvah, it's a reference to tzedakah. So if that's the case, then what are you telling me about every coin adds to a big thing? Every coin? Every coin is a mitzvah. The biggest mitzvah you can do. Equivalent to all. Indeed, Rambam writes, Rambam is Maimonides. Rambam, Rabbi Moshe ben Maimon. Maimon was his father's name. Maimonides is where you get the Maimonides from. It's Greek for the son of Maimon. So his father's name was Maimon and his name was Moshe Rambam. And the Rambam writes, Rambam writes lots of books. He writes books of Jewish thought and Jewish faith and belief, a lot of that about the Mashiach and about believing God. He was there during the time of when the Muslims were very radical. Didn't happen that often, does it? Anyway, but he had to run away from Spain as a result of that, and then from Morocco, and then to Egypt, and he was running his whole life because of the radicalization of them. And so the Jews, Islam doesn't believe in another God. They just believe in the Prophet Muhammad. So the Jews were very confused by the Islam, especially when it came with the sword, and the Jews weren't sure what to do. And he writes to the Yemenites, he writes a long letter about faith. And I mean, he stands up for so many things. He writes a commentary to the Mishnah, part of the Talmud, but his magnum opus, his lifetime achievement, which is, that's the magnum, magnum is big, opus is. Anyway, but that's Latin for his lifetime achievement was his book of law. We study the Rambam every day, 3 chapters a day to finish the entire 14 heavy volumes in a year. And so his book of law, he writes as follows. We are obligated to be scrupulous with this commandment more than all other commandments. The Torah obligates a person to be worried about this one more than anything else. Israel will be redeemed from exile only by virtue of their acts of charity. This is also a quote from the Talmud, which the Rambam brings in law. That means this is part of our law, not just part of our folklore, part of our tradition. This is law. And it was for his charitable conduct that Abraham was praised by God. As the verse states, I have cherished him because he commands his children to be charitable and just. So, look at footnote 9. All of the above passages infer that the giving of even a single coin to charity is a great mitzvah in its own right, for which one is aptly rewarded. What, then, is the novelty that each and every coin adds up to a large sum? Why is that relevant? Each coin is a large sum, is a big deal, is a mitzvah. So why give us this statement about each coin adds up to a large sum when each coin really fulfills the mitzvah, the obligation? The Torah doesn't say how much to give. The Torah just says give. If you're giving to charity, then you're fulfilling the mitzvah. You have more, so you give more. So if a guy is a millionaire and he gives a dime to tzedakah every morning, is he fulfilling the mitzvah of tzedakah?
Yeah.
Well, it sounds like it. It doesn't say how much to give. So it seems like it. So why are you telling me about every little coin adds up to a large sum? We must therefore interpret the Talmudic statement to mean as follows. That means you can't simply say that every single coin adds up to a large sum when every single coin is a large sum. You can't say it that way. So how do you explain it? Although one does fulfill an active commandment by giving even one coin to charity, I just asked you if the millionaire gives a dime, would he fulfill the mitzvah? And you said yes. Although he fulfills the commandment, certainly the reward for giving a larger sum is far greater because you're sacrificing more of yourself. It is according to according to how much you are lacking that God says, I want to fill that lack. You don't lose by giving tzedakah. That's what God is saying. You're not going to lose out of this. So therefore, you have to say that what it means is that every small amount adds up to a large sum, and if you give a big amount, that's even a bigger amount. Therefore, the Talmud teaches us here that even if one gives coins to charity one by one, they all add up, and it is considered as if the person gave them all at once. Now, before we explain this, let's look at number 10. Although the Talmud is implying the superiority of a single large contribution by stating that each and every coin adds up to a large sum, so therefore, if you give a big coin, that's a massive sum, and God has much more armor on his body, if you will. Our sages assure us that small contributions accumulate and are considered to have been given as one large contribution. So a person may think, I'm not a millionaire. I'm not even 1,000 there. I might not even be 100 there. I don't have, but I can give a dime every day. And that I can do. But it's insignificant. Nothing. The dime every day equals 365 dimes a year. Because on Shabbos, before Shabbos you'll give twice, or before Yom Tov you'll give 3 times. You give 30 cents. So by the end of the year, you've given 365 times 10, 3,650 cents, which works out to be $36.50. You know what? The person isn't 100 there, doesn't even have that $36. But over a year, the person finds it. So you may think, oh, I'm just giving a dime every day. Yes, that's one way of looking at it. The other way of looking at it is I'm giving $36.50 a year. And that's something that you couldn't do every day. And a millionaire who $36.50 every day is very little. He spends that on paper towels. So the $36.50 that he gives every day, 365 times, is tens of thousands of dollars. He may think $36.50 is not that much money, but tens of thousands is. And that's how it works. So the Talmud is teaching, excuse me, do not disturb, it has to come on here. Do not disturb for another hour. So the Talmud is teaching that small contributions are also important, and they are also valuable. They are also something that God looks at and are rewarded. The small contributions, and a person shouldn't think that there's because we obviously if every single coin adds up to a big sum, so a big sum adds up to a massive sum, a bigger sum, much bigger sum. We know that. The Talmud is trying to emphasize that even small sums are also good and significant and welcomed. Everything you give, every penny you give, accumulates, and you'll be treated as though you've given from your heart, even though it might sound like insignificant in your eyes. So now it makes sense. Not so fast. A little line of Talmud. Seemed very innocent. It seemed very sweet. Every little bit you give accumulates to a large sum, not so fast. That's how Talmud is. That's how Judaism is. We continue to probe, we continue to push, we continue to question, we continue to dig into these statements until we got it straight here. This interpretation, however, is problematic, for it implies that a single large contribution is superior in some way to smaller periodical ones. So if I came to the Kabbalah Peachtree City charity event and I gave $1,000, $5,000, and that's my contribution for the year. All right, so I gave my contribution. I went out of my way. I dug in. I saved up for the last 2 months, and now I plunked it down. Kabbalah Peachtree City needs that kind of contribution, and I feel very good about my contribution. So a single large contribution is a lot of money, $1,000, and that's superior to the smaller periodical ones. I could have given Kabbalah Peachtree City $50 a week, waited until it accumulates to $1,000, and I would have, I would have given $1,000 over the 3 months. Instead, I kept it to myself, and then when the time came and when it was needed, boom, it landed, and all together, it felt good to give away $1,000 because I had it. I kept it every day. Every paycheck I put away somewhere. Now I had the big sum. Now I can give it. So it felt good. So this implies that giving a large sum is superior than giving a small sum, because the large sum gives you a large reward. God gets a big piece of armor on his mail. Gets a big mail, big sack of mail. Although the total amounts are the same, one person not having donated more than the other one has, it's the same amount. Nonetheless, a single large contribution is superior. Why? Since the sages were compelled to conclude that each and every coin adds up to a large sum, they were trying to teach us that every single coin adds up to a large sum. Evidently, a single large contribution is indeed superior, and we are assured that each and every coin also adds up to a large sum. But the large sum is the large sum. That's the one that you want to really give, because that's every single little coin adds up to the large sum. So the large sum is the goal. If the large sum is the goal, then little coins are not the goal. They don't seem to be a goal. And that's a problem, because we know that every single coin is another mitzvah. Torah doesn't say how much. So every dime is a mitzvah. It seems like the Talmud is making the little man feel good. Oh, I know you're only giving a couple of dollars, little boy, but it's okay. The couple of dollars will also grow to a large sum, so don't feel so bad, little man. But we're looking for the big donors. Those are the ones. We're looking for the big man, not the little man. And that doesn't seem consistent here with what he built up before, which is that every mitzvah, every time he gives tzedakah, and the Torah says give, and there are people who can't, who are not capable of giving. There are people who are simply not capable of giving a large amount, not because their hearts are not givers, in their hearts are simply not givers. They can't seem to part with their money, but because they don't have. There are people who are living on Social Security. They're getting less than $1,000 a month. And they have to pay for rent, and they have to pay for food, and every penny they give out is calculated. And if they have to give $2 over the limit, they're missing $2. To us, $2 may not seem like much, but to someone who's living squarely on Social Security, $2 can be the difference between a bottle of milk, which could last for a week and a half, or to pay your cell phone bill, which they may not use frequently, or whatever. Your dry cleaning for that month, just $2 can make a difference in someone's life. There were people who, to our charity campaign, gave $2. And those are people that we know can't afford it. To us, that was like getting $2,000 when we knew who gave it and the heart that was behind that. So, are the sages simply trying to placate the little guy here? They're trying to say, don't worry, little man. It's okay. Just give every day a small amount, and we will consider it. Yeah, we'll count it up. God will count it up. Because that doesn't really make sense in the commandment of giving tzedakah, giving charity. When the Torah says, open up your hand. That's what it says, and give. It doesn't say give a dime, and it doesn't say give $1, and it doesn't say give $10,000. It says simply give. That's all it says. And so for one person, giving is giving their whole heart away when they give $2, $2. And to another person, if they gave $2,000 and they could do a lot more than that, then their hearts are still closed. The strings are tight. They don't seem to, to be able to part with their money. They're just worried about, I need more. I need more. And I need more. I need a sit of more. So what is it? What is the Talmud saying? But no, we're not finished yet debating this line of Talmud. We still have more to think about. So, are we taking care of the little guy? He says, no, that can't be. Let's see why. We said why because the Torah says give. Now let's see what the Rambam says about giving. Such an assertion, however, runs contrary to Rambam's interpretation of the Mishnah in Avot. Avot means fathers, like Abba. Avot is plural for father. And there is, in the Mishnah, there are 6 chapters which are in the volume of Avot. Avot would mean the ethics of our fathers. This is, in other words, this is Jewish tradition, this is not Jewish law. This is the only part of the Mishnah that it's not giving you law. It's giving you things that are beyond the measure of the law. And that's pure Jewish life, the way Jews live. And there are a lot of different things in there. There are stories and there are ideas, but these are all not law. They're all about ethics or beyond the measure of the law. So what does it say in the Avot chapter 3, Mishnah 15? It states there, everything is according to the preponderance of good deeds. Look at 12, at footnote 12. The Mishnah in full reads, everything is foreseen, yet freedom of choice is given, which is a very tough subject, because if people have a tough time wrapping their minds around this. If everything is foreseen, that means everything that is ever going to happen is already known by God, then what kind of choice do you have? Now, I don't understand why people struggle with that, because I don't know what God knows. So I am making choices, and God knows which choices I'm going to make, but it's my choice. But people ask, can you change your choice? In other words, can you choose something that God didn't? But God didn't decide my choice. God just knew what I would choose. So if He knows what I'm going to choose, I am choosing that. What kind of question is it, can I choose something else? I made the choice not to do it the other way. And He knows what choice I will have made. He knew that when He created the world, He already knew that. What choices I will make in my life. Which is impossible for a human being even to... How do you understand how God knows when He created the world, how many tens of billions of people will go through this world and the choices that each one will make? But anyway, that's beyond. We know the God that a kid told me on this trip. So one of the guys said to me, I don't remember how the conversation went, but towards the end of the conversation, I said, so what if I don't believe in God, or I don't believe in the Torah? I said, the Torah that you don't believe in, I don't believe in either. You don't even know what the Torah is not to believe in it. You don't even know what God is not to believe in God. The God that you don't believe in? That God I don't believe in either. The God that you don't know is the God that I don't know either. You don't know what God is. You haven't spent 1 minute studying God, so how do you know that you don't believe in God? First study, get into it, and then you can say, well, that part of it, I don't know. But first, get in it, get to it. There's a lot going on here. Anyway, so everything is foreseen, yet freedom of choice is given. The world is judged with goodness, even though we may think that it is tough out there. And why do good people have to suffer? Why do wicked prosper? That's a question that we ask all the time. But everything is good. Everything is good. And everything is according to the preponderance of good deeds. Everything is according to how much we do. Everything. Everything. That's so typically Jewish. No other religion has that. Every other religion is how much do you believe in God? How much are you ready to die for God? How much? And the Jewish religion is how many more mitzvahs will you do? How much more tzedakah will you give? How much more will you daven? How much closer will you get to God? How much more kosher will you keep? And on and on. It's all about the action. And so I got flack for this in this trip when they stumped the rabbi. And I've mentioned this before, so I'll just make it brief, that on the first night of Passover, the guy's in jail, a thug, a Jewish robber, a man who you don't even know, how could a Jew do this? And he's surrounded by other thugs, and he gets this package right before Passover, and it's 3 matzahs, and the guy says, what's this? He says, the Jews do this on this night because it's Passover, but I'm not doing this. And they say, oh yeah, you are. We're going to have a good time with you tonight. We're going to stuff that down your throat. He says, no, I'm not. They sit on him that night, and they stuff it down his throat. So he's eaten the equivalent of an olive, which is how much you have to eat on the first night of Passover. He's taken it down. On the same town, on the other side of town, there's a great saintly holy rabbi who spends the entire night with his students, and he's teaching about Exodus and about matzah and about maror and 4 cups of wine and asking questions and answering them. And it's all of a sudden it's 5:30 in the morning, the light comes out, and the Torah says you have to eat matzah in the evening, and they haven't gotten to the matzah yet. He spent the whole night in total inspiration, singing songs and telling stories and interpreting parts of the Talmud and the Torah and the prophets. And he's gotten into it. So who has fulfilled the obligation that night? Who has done the mitzvah? The convict sitting in jail, and he had matzah which he didn't want to eat, and he abused his religion, and they stuffed it down his throat just to show him. Or the rabbi sitting there inspiring. And the answer is
The jailbird.
the guy in jail. It's action. It's not about inspiration. It's about the action. Now, of course, it doesn't mean that therefore a person shouldn't sit and discuss and debate and till 5:30 in the morning about Passover and about Exodus and the freedom and all that stuff. Of course, you should do that, but don't forget to eat the matzah. It's a simple act of eating. Well, maybe not simple, but it's by the way, it's 8 weeks from last night was the second Seder. 7.5 weeks is the first night of Passover.
I hate when you do that.
It's a reminder of what's coming.
It's on the calendar.
You haven't turned the page yet.
You just seem to make it that much closer.
Well, it is.
Well, now
It doesn't seem to.
I didn't mean him,
when you
excuse
flip
me.
the calendar.
I know.
If you want to know how long Rosh Hashanah is, how many? It's also
The years go
30
by
something
fast
weeks.
enough as it is when you get older.
I'm always ahead
I know.
to know, never to get say, oh my gosh, it's Purim already.
Oh,
Remember?
I'm sorry.
Remember these things are rapidly approaching. Anyway, so so when it comes to Torah observance, it is not about faith. It's not about inspiration. It's not about belief. Everything is according to the preponderance of good deeds. You do good deeds, you get checks. If you do the good deeds with inspiration and new ideas, and you study, that's the ultimate. If your deed is coming together with inspiration, then the whole deed is elevated to a whole different level. But it's the deed, and everything follows the deed. So the inspiration about the deed, it's the deed, and then the deed can be elevated to a whole different level if it's done in a inspirational and happy and joyous and lovable way. Okay, so that's what it says. So the Rambam quotes this Mishnah, and everything follows the preponderance of good deeds. And in his commentary, Rambam notes that the use of the phrase preponderance of good deeds, and not magnitude of good deeds, not the great good deeds, but the preponderance of it, suggests that the actions that are repeated determine the extent of one's reward. Preponderance is how much you do, not how big they are, but how many you do. How many have you done? So that's not how much you've done, but how many you have done. How many times have you done it? Not how big it is, but how frequent is it? How enmeshed is it within us? And distributing, for example, 100 coins to charity, 1 coin at a time, is superior to a one-time contribution of the same amount. That's what Rambam writes. So if I gave 100 coins in 100 days, or at the end of the 100th day, or the beginning of the 100th day, I gave 100 coins, it's the giving every day because it's the preponderance. It's the how much have you done? How many times have you done it? The opinion of Rambam is also quoted by Rabbi Vadia of Bar Tanura. You ever heard of Bar Tanura? It's a wine. That blue, fizzy wine. It's called Bar Tanura. It's a company called Bar Tanura. Rabbi Avadia of Bar Tanura lived in Bar Tanura, which is a little town in Italy. Still exists today. And he's called the Bar Tanura. If you tell somebody it's Bar Tanura, they say, wait a minute. It's like saying the Peachtree City. Yeah. So he's got a commentary, and they don't call him Rabbi Vadia, they don't call him the commentary, they call him Bar Tanura, that's his name. So, and we got Rashi wine as well, by the way. You know Rashi is a commentary, right? All right. So we got Rabbi Vadia Bar Tanura, and his commentary on the Mishnah, he also says this. Igeret HaKodesh, which is a letter written by the first Rebbe of Chabad, quotes this opinion as well. And here's what he says. Indeed, in the service of charity, we have also found and noted a particularly great and incomparably wondrous virtue. When the act of charity is performed numerous times, and whoever does so frequently is praiseworthy, rather than at one time and all at once, even when the total sum is the same, as Rambam of blessed memory wrote in his commentary on the Mishnah, taught by our sages of blessed memory, everything is according to the preponderance of good deeds. This is a quote from the Rebbe in his letter, again agreeing with the fact that it's about how many you've done, not how much you've done. So these Jews that come 3 times a year to the synagogue, it's good, it's great to see them. It's nice that you showed up, and I'm sure that you get a certain recognition, reward for doing that. But it's about how many times you can come, not about what days are you coming. It's about taking it always to the next level. And this is talking to everyone. It's not just to the commoners. You're talking to rabbis. How much have you done? You think you did a big deal yesterday. Well, how much are you learning today? It's all about that. It's all about keep on going. As the Rebbe always quoted the Talmud that says, a person who has 100 won't stop because he wants 200. And one who got 200 will continue to work on it to get 400. That's the nature of us. So that should be in the spiritual realm as well. And then he's going to go on to continue quoting from the first Rebbe the virtue of continuing to give many times. But we will go back to that hopefully next week, certainly next time we get together. And we will continue the discussion about doing things over and over again rather than doing them in one accumulated shot, and why that is important.